Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carrie. This is where I talk about knitting, my tips, my tricks, my opinions, and my preferences. And today, it's another video about knitting in the round. I love knitting hats. I have for a very long time. It's one of my favorite projects. But when I first learned how to knit, I think I've talked about this before, patterns would always say to knit a hat on a 16-inch circular, and then when the crown became too small to work on a 16-inch circular, switch to DPNs. Kind of a pain in the butt and very intimidating for a new knitter. But a friend at a Stitch and Bitch, actually it was the West Hollywood Stitch and Bitch. Anyway, I digress. A friend at a Stitch and Bitch told me about Magic Loop, and that changed everything. It was amazing to me that with one long 32-inch circular, I could knit any circumference at all. It was great. Except, turns out, I don't love Magic Loop. I like it. We're friends. We're like neighbors. We'll borrow a cup of sugar from each other, but at the end of the day, we're not like BFFs. We're not an inner circle type of friendship. We're more like outer circle type of friendship. Regardless, I absolutely will use Magic Loop when I am knitting, but if I can use other techniques, I absolutely will. And when it comes to knitting hats, what I've discovered I really love to use is a technique called traveling loop or half magic loop. And what this allows me to do is to start off knitting the body of the hat on one long circular needle, and then when the circumference at the top of the hat when working the crown becomes too small, I can then just switch to magic loop for the few rounds of crown decreasing. And I have found this is like my ideal way to knit a hat. So today I'm going to share with you the magic of traveling loop. If you want to see how it works, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's knit. Before we jump into everything, as always, I want to let you know that down in the description box you can find timestamps to different parts of the video. I always hope that you watch the video all the way through at least one time, because you never know what tip I might throw in, or there's just a funny little moment you might want to see. But life is happening, sometimes you just need to get to the goods. So if you need to get to the goods, timestamps are down below. Also down in the description box, you will find my affiliate links. If you click on an affiliate link, it'll take you to a website where you can do some shopping. And if you make a purchase, then I might earn a small commission. And these commissions help support my mission, which is to spread the love and joy of crafting. So, no pressure in terms of my affiliate links. But if you do utilize one, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. But most of all, I just appreciate everyone here who's watching my video. So here's a hat that I am knitting, and I'm using a 32-inch circular needle. So if I were to try to knit this the way one would, just utilizing a circular needle, it wouldn't be possible because there aren't enough stitches to go all the way around the circumference of the needle, right? So in Magic Loop, the way you overcome this is really very, very clever, because really what it's doing is you're taking the excess cable out so that you can get the needles together to knit smaller circumferences. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I were to knit this as it is now with Magic Loop, I would kind of find about the midway point of my work, and I take the cable and I pull it like this, and both of my needles would become parallel to one another, thusly, right? Well, I can't knit this way. So then you pull the second needle out, and I create these two loops. So I have a loop here, and I have a loop here, but I can get my needles together enough to start knitting. If you want to use Magic Loop, my big tip for it is to use the shortest long circular needle that you can get away with. Like right now I'm doing 32-inch circular needle, and I have therefore very small loops on either side of my hat. I find the loops stay more out of my way, and it's a little bit easier to manage than if I have a lot more loop kind of flopping around. Generally, you have to use at least a 32-inch cable, but depending on the circumference that you're working, you can use a 24-inch cable with magic loop. It really just depends on how small the circumference is. All right, so I'm getting here to the end of my first half of stitches. I'm gonna turn my work, right? So here's my second half of my stitches that I need to knit. So I'm gonna pull, again from the back, I pull my needle up and I get my stitches up on the needle. Here are all my stitches. Here's my front needle, my back needle. I take the back needle and I pull that out. Oops, I pulled a little too much. That's okay. I just go back here and pull the excess cable for that other loop, get myself set up. And now I can go about knitting the second half of my circumference. And this is what I mean by the fact that magic loop is a lot of sort of pulling and getting stitches back up on the needles. There's a lot of arranging that you're sort of always doing when you utilize magic loop. I think that bugs some people. I think sometimes it bugs me, if you want to know the truth. For some reason, I find all that rearranging and everything just easier to do with two circular needles. I enjoy the process more. But when it comes to some items like knitted hats, I don't want to pull out two needles. I just don't. And the great thing about magic loop is with one needle, through an entire project, you can knit a hat no matter what the circumference is at any point within the project. But I don't have to use magic loop for the most of this project. I can instead use a variation of magic loop, sometimes called half magic loop, or as I know it, as traveling loop. And what this does is so simple. It's amazing. It's the same idea as magic loop, which is pulling out that excess cable and kind of just having a little loop off to the side so that you can knit a smaller circumference than what the circular needle would create. So here I am with my project and my stitches are just on the cable. I'm going to grab the back needle, which will be my right needle. I'm going to pull that needle and get my stitches up on the left needle like you would. Then I'm going to pull my right needle out as far as I can and create as big of a loop as I can off to the right side of the work. And then I just insert my needle and I start knitting. And that's it. I'm now going to just knit around the circumference of the hat. And the reason this gets called, traveling loop is because the loop will travel around the hat as I knit this round. And it's kind of magical. I don't know. For some reason, I just get a kick out of the fact that the loop is just like on its own, traveling around the circumference of the hat. And I don't have to rearrange anything. I don't have to pull the needle out. I don't have to stop halfway through the circumference of the hat to rearrange my needles and my stitches. I can just knit on my merry way as if I were utilizing a 16-inch circular needle. And that's basically what traveling loop and magic loop do, is they basically takes a longer needle and it creates a smaller needle with it. And 90% of this hat will be knitted with this technique. And here I am at the end, and look, here's my loop. My loop is just coming right around. The other really nice thing with this technique, by the way, with traveling loop, is that loop ends up acting as a stitch marker. Like, you know you've reached the end of the round because that big loop of cable is right there. And there you go. And I'm at the end of my knitting. And when I start another round, I just pull, pull, pull again. And I'm ready to go. And that's the other thing I really like about this traveling loop technique is that the transition is really fast because you got to get your stitches up on your needle and you pull the cable and then you bring your needle back and you start knitting. So, you know, it's not quite like working with a 16-inch circular where you really can just knit and knit and knit and knit around. But sometimes having a pause between rounds is not a bad thing because sometimes having a pause reminds you where you are and to stop for a second and look at your knitting and make sure everything is okay. So I kind of like the fact that with this, I always know that I've reached the end of my round. So if I need to do any checks on my knitting, I can do those checks. Or if I'm like, oh, this is where I'm going to do a color change because I'm doing stripes, now's my time for my color change. And in fact, now is the time for my color change. So yeah, that's traveling loop. And I really enjoy this technique. It's a lot of fun to do. I think that it's not as fussy as magic loop or even two circular needles. There is, however, a limitation to traveling loop, which is you can't knit any size circumference with it. And the reason is there comes a point where, I'll just show you right now, like that's the smallest circumference right there, probably. Even that might be pushing it, but that's kind of the smallest circumference that I could probably create with this needle. So once the crown of my hat is smaller than this circumference that I can create with traveling loop, I can no longer use traveling loop. That's the limitation of it. But at that point, I can then just transition to utilizing magic loop and still stay on my same needle. So as long as I have a long enough cable that I'm utilizing with my circular needle to do magic loop, I can just easily transition from utilizing traveling loop to utilizing magic loop. And doing magic loop for a few rounds of crown shaping is fine. That's fine with me. And I just love that when I knit a hat, utilizing a combination of traveling loop and magic loop, that I just need one circular needle the entire time. I really like that about this technique. But there is that limitation with traveling loop. Like, there's only like certain circumstances where it's going to be useful. But those times where with it is useful, it's fantastic. So that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions about traveling loop or magic loop or any technique down in the description box. And also, I would love to, excuse me, burpee, please don't. If you love knitting hats as much as I do, you might like getting this book that I have, which is Vogue Knitting, the Ultimate Hat Book. Oh good, I said it right without looking at the title. Woo, yay me. I've had this book for years, and this is one of those books where I might not knit a lot of the patterns in it, not because they're bad patterns by any stretch of the imagination, but oh my god, look at this. Like, look at this. Look at this, like right here. That's so cool. Sometimes when I lose a little bit of my knitting mojo, I like to look through books like this, and it just kind of inspires me. Like, look at this great cable tam. I'll be honest, it's not very often that I'm into a pattern book. My favorite knitting books tend to be more reference book, but this is one pattern book where I feel like a lot of the patterns in it are kind of, they inspire me, but also I have learned a lot of cool techniques just reading through this book. And down in the description box, you will find an affiliate link to this book, which again, if you use an affiliate link, you know, and you make a purchase, I then might get a small commission that helps support my channel. No pressure whatsoever. So yes, Vogue Knitting, the Ultimate Hat Book. If you love hats, I think this is kind of a must for your library. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your knitting friends. Liking, sharing, commenting helps YouTube know that this is a space worth checking out, and then my videos get recommended to other knitters, and this community keeps growing, which is amazing. So yeah, please do all the YouTubey things, including subscribing and hitting the notification bell, subscribing and hitting the notification bell, and making sure your notifications are turned on will assure that you are alerted whenever I upload a new video or start a live stream. So that's it for today. Thank you again for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy knitting. Bye. So today, I'm going to share with you the magic of told me about magic. And for some reason, I just find that process more enjoyable utilizing two circular needlers. Okay, that's it. That's it for my plugs. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. It's just enough that you're here.